Hey folks, it's Nate. It's time I got back to the drawing board, and today we're back with another chapter of Naoki Urosawa's Monster. This is chapter 12, and this is pretty much the climax of this early story. And we're starting to really see the balancing of character development versus action in this story. And this is what really keeps the tension and suspense high throughout this entire story is this balance, because we had the previous couple of chapters where we introduced Nina, or Anna if you prefer, her the name she was first introduced as, and we also have Tenma, and they're both kind of doing their Nina's going through her day-to-day life. Tenma is investigating the murder, and we learn a little bit about each of their characters over the course of two chapters. And now we are winding up for the gut punch, which is what we have here. Well, this is kind of the prelude to it, but this is where we really start to see some action. So this is a little more balanced than the first arc, which was about 5 chapters of character development, and then really only 2 or 3 chapters of real payoff. So this is a little more balanced, and this is kind of the balance that Urasawa was going to be shooting for through the rest of the story. And it works much better, in my opinion, simply because it gives us something really interesting happening every couple of chapters. This is, again, published on a monthly basis, I believe. So that means every month you were basically getting a complete story arc with a payoff. So there would be the first half of the month would be set up where characters were explored and introduced and developed a little bit, and then the second half of the month would be the payoff on that character development, the action beats that really ratchet up the tension and really give you that emotional satisfaction that ties back into that character progression and helps you understand how the story is progressing then from character beat to character beat. So it's interesting. You could actually map this story in 2 different ways. You could show us the character development, or you could show us the plot beats, and those are not directly linked every time, but they are often very woven together very well. And of course, here we had the major character beats are setting up the person who is most important to this plot point. So Nina is turning 20, and her brother has promised to come back and get her. And of course, Johann has murdered every family that he stayed with already. So he's probably going to murder Nina's family too. And of course, we had them set up in the previous chapters. So there's some stakes here. We know that there's a very good chance that the Fortner family that Nina has been staying with is going to die, or at least someone's going to try and kill them. And we know that Tenma and his partner in crime, Herr Mauer from the Heidelberg newspaper, are aware that it is now Nina's birthday, and therefore Johann is most likely to come for her. So they are rushing to get to her. So we have this ticking clock, if you will. Johann is coming for her by the end of the day today. In point of fact, at 7 p.m., because he promised to meet her at Heidelberg Castle at 7 p.m. So we have a time limit. We have a very compressed time limit because Mauer and Tenma just discovered that her birthday is today, a little while before. So here we see Nina going to the castle. That's the setup. The castle is where the payoff is going to be. And then we have Tenma and Mauer going to the Fortner's house, the address of which they got from a 9-year-old, 8-year-old, 7-year-old, fairly old, something like that. Well, they were looking for an 11-year-old, so yeah, 9 years old. So going off of a 9-year-old newspaper article, they have tracked down the Fortner house, and they're going there. And there's most of this chapter simply serves to build the tension around this point. There's very little to no character development. There's very little to no exposition. There is some exposition, but it comes about naturally. So when Tenma and Mauer get to the Fortner's house, they knock on the door and they have to convince them that they understand what's going on. And to do that, they kind of recap the situation on these 2 pages. And again, this is an excellent use of recap because this not only reminds the audience of the story in previous chapters, it does it in a way that seems natural and actually drives the story forward because there needs to be a reason for the Fortners to trust Tenma. And Tenma provides that by showing that he understands the situation. He understands that these are orphans, they had a brother, and that, the brother went missing, and he tells them something bad is going to happen. And that establishes the trust. Now, a lesser writer may have chosen to simply have Tenma earn the Fortners' trust some other way, do them a favor, help them out of a sticky situation, or even possibly just rescue them in the middle of the murder attempt that we know is coming. But this allows him to get the exposition out and remind his audience of what is going on while still moving the story forward. And admittedly, there are other ways this could have been worked in. And of course, if this was a longer format, if this was a book or a BD style graphic novel, you could easily do without it entirely, and you could have him earn the Fortners' trust some other way. But given the constraints of the medium and the fact that he had to do this already, this is a very good use of this kind of recapping exposition that allows Urosawa to remind the audience of what is going on while still pressing the story forward. So all well and good there. After earning the Fortners' trust, Tenma is told that Nina is at Heidelberg Castle, so he runs there, and they meet this one page back. Okay, so there's a gardener here. I like the setup where the gardener is just there working when Nina first gets there. Of course, there's this close-up of him working with the shears, which may be a giveaway that he's more important than he would seem if this was the first time we saw him. Honestly, if I was the editor, I may even have suggested taking this panel out. That would have been a discussion to have. But all in all, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good introduction. So we see this guy set up, and it turns out he's supposed to have Nina wait there at the castle, make sure she doesn't go anywhere. And in the meantime, Tenma is running along to trying to get to the castle in time, having left Mauer at the Fortner's house. So this brings us to the climactic reunion. Tenma meets Anna for the first time in 10 years. And of course, he calls her by her correct name. She doesn't know who he is because she's lost all her memories. She doesn't really, and honestly, he didn't interact directly with Anna a whole lot in the hospital. But here we have our meeting of the 2 protagonists, really, for the story. For the first time in any meaningful sense, Anna having been pretty much catatonic during the time she was in the hospital. And, of course, the gardener is not interested in having this guy here because he's supposed to keep other people away and keep Nina from leaving. So he tackles Tenma, and there's kind of a scuffle. Nina breaks it up because she knows Aikido. And honestly, that is the bulk of the story. And it ends on Tenma realizing what's about to happen. And because, again, the Fortners are a target. Johann has come through and he has cleaned up all of the loose ends. And the fact of the matter is, the Fortners are a loose end. And, Tenma realizes that Johann isn't coming here first to collect Nina or Anna, or pick your name. He's going to go to the Fortners. And so they dash off. And of course, I love this ending where we see someone approaching the gardener, and it even looks like Johann's head if you look really closely at the shadow there, implying that he has already dealt with the Fortners and he has come to clean up another loose end. Because when you work for a monster, well, that's what happens to you. If I had critique to give to this chapter, I don't think the ending is as strong as most of the others. It really just ends on Nina trying to put all of the pieces together. She's breaking through that memory block, as is kind of implied by this last panel, and coming back to her memories. And, it's good and bad, because a monster is not really a thing you want to think about. But she's going to have to, because she's going to be coming face to face with his handiwork. But more on that in chapter 13.